Thanks everybody for taking the time this morning. And this one we'll be talking about different redundancies that are available for a surveillance system, and in particular our surveillance system. Where are we? So the short title is ensuring surveillance reliability, protecting your footage for technical faults and sabotage. But essentially, we're going to go through, just look at certain things that can go wrong and ways to mitigate it, just to really maximize the uptime of the security system that is keeping you safe. When I say security system, I do mean surveillance system. So please don't ask me about questions about antivirus or security policy. That was a lifetime ago now. But let's start very simply with some scenarios that could compromise your recordings. Firstly, and most simply, a good stone will do it. Our TC500 camera is IK67 rated, so that means it will take a fairly good whack, but anybody with some determination and a good throwing arm could damage the cameras. On top of that, there is the ever-present risk of there being a power cut or a network outage. Now, if your system is entirely cloud-based, things like Ring doorbell, etc., and an internet outage is going to be an absolute sort of death sentence for your system if you don't have any redundancy in place. But power as well can take an entire system offline. So, of course, there are bad actors, those being sort of anybody who comes onto your premises for the purposes of theft. Might as well steal your NVR or your recording device while they're up there. So, yeah, this footage is not any good to you if they walk out of the door with it. And also, if your systems are online accessible, you could also be vulnerable to hackers. And finally, just sort of device wear and tear. Things like the drives inside the devices do fail. This is why we have things like RAID arrays to compensate for that. But it's another factor, things that can go wrong on the individual kit when planning an uptime routine and putting policy in place. So that was what I was asked to do for this one, to give you guys a bit of an insight as to how I would approach redundancy planning for a business. And my answer to that, as someone who used to be a security auditor, is no one size fits all. You're never going to have, no matter how hard you try, an absolutely foolproof solution. There's always going to be something that goes wrong that you couldn't have anticipated, or a combination of factors that mean that the best of intentions didn't go through. So really, with that involved, as much as I hate to use this term, it is a little bit of risk versus reward, and you do need to understand what your tolerance or appetite for risk is in your business, and make informed decisions that are in line with what is reasonable for the asset value. And what do I mean by that? I mean that your home security system does not need to match up to Fort Knox. It would be silly to spend the amount of money that they require for the uptime that they get for it. As long as your business is as protected or more protected than all of the other estates in your business park, you're probably the safe one. If you are storing something of particular value, then you might need to invest a little bit more. And that brings me on to the third point, which is, solutions that are tailored to your specific risks. If you're an organization that has, for example, sensitive documents in a vault, and you're the kind of business that is known to process those kind of sensitive information, you might want to have something specifically there watching the vault. If you have assets that are high value, maybe you're a warehouse that stores high value products, high value tech products, or jewelry, etc. You might want to have more cameras covering every aspect of the warehouse, because that's an area that's more likely to be an attractive target for feeds. So really, with the idea of cost and versus the capabilities, the first level of redundancy to look at is device level redundancy. So I've used RAID as an example here. If one of the disks in your NVR fails, and you don't have a RAID array, that can be your entire device down, because drive corruption, can't write the footage, you also can't restore it. But it isn't limited to just that. Also, simple things like power and network redundancies are very important to cater for, and we'll talk more about that as we go through. On top of that, you also have device level failover. So if it's more than just one aspect of the device, but a complete device failure, is there any way that you can mitigate one of your crucial pieces of recording equipment going down? Can you fail it off somewhere else? And also, we talk about 3-2-1 backup all the time here at Synology because it is at the core of our business model. But yes, having some kind of offsite storage for your existing footage, and if you have the ability to sort of fail over live, so that that's maintained if a device on site is broken, stolen, removed, goes down for any reason, that's also going to be advantageous. So let's start by thinking about who's going to have the most risk. And I think the most obvious one that should be in everybody's minds is, of course, banks. Actual fact, by the way, most banks don't really have that much money these days on the premises at any given time. You won't find actually that places like jewelry stores or large tech stores, places like Apple shops and stuff like that, the material value of the goods on the floor will probably exceed what's in the bank vault. So if you operate in that sort of space of luxury goods, then you're probably at even more risk these days than the banks themselves. On top of that, you also have both government and military type scenarios, places where the value is in the secrets, and just making sure that nobody gets in and is able to tamper with anything or to take information off the site. Also, prisons, they're going to be under quite a lot of risk because accidents happen when cameras go down in prisons, and also people might want to get access to information that people within those prison complexes can give. So getting the cameras and recording equipment to go offline for a little bit of time could be quite lucrative. So you might come under fire for that. And lastly, anywhere that stores public assets is probably going to be, someone is under more threat and also need to take it more seriously. For example, anywhere that offers storage space to others, your clients' belongings are going to be just as attractive to thieves as any sort of retail shop, and also car parks as well. Cars can be quite expensive, so these are absolutely places that are targeted by petty criminals. So let's take this in a more sort of a more fun direction. I've tried to have fun with this one because it is a bit of a dry subject. And I'm going to ask you guys, how safe do you think you are? And what we're going to do is we're going to use the example of a bank heist, an example of a crew that is dedicated to getting into the vault, and how they might approach it, and how system redundancies can step in and make it more difficult for them to get away without getting caught in the act. So this one is a little bit silly. You're going to have to work with me on this one, but we're going to work with the fake study of Harvest and Trustee. Now, I appreciate there's only 40 of you in the chat here, but if you guys have made a withdrawal from Harvest and Trustee before, then I'd like you to get in touch and post me your time because I'm sure I'm faster. But for the sake of argument, Harvest and Trustee have got 4 tellers on staff and 4 financial security consultants, so around about 8 people in the building from their core staff. They also employ 2 security guards. So what's attractive to thieves is they'll, of course, have around about 20,000 in the vault, which is standard for a bank. They'll also have 5,000 in addition in floating cash behind the counter for transactions. They've got 5 NTMs on the site. Those ATMs have got 4 grand in each. So that means that the total haul for someone who's dedicated enough to crack their system is around about 45 grand, which is not bad for a morning's work. They do have a fair bit of security, as you'd expect from a bank. They have 24 cameras. Now you can see the 2 maps here. I'm going to cover those on the next slide. You'll be able to see them in a little bit more detail. But we'll look at the camera layouts there. And they also have rapid response from the police. So here we go, those maps again, and I will refer to these as we go through. One on the left is from the outside. As you can see, they've got fairly even coverage all around the outside of the building to give them, visibility of everything that's going on outside. And then the second map, that map on the right, is inside the building. And as you can see, pretty decent coverage throughout the building, with a focus area there in the vault. So the first stage of this intrusion, a petty criminal, someone who wouldn't take part in the rest of it, just came round and swung a bat at a camera, taking out the backdoor access. So that means now that someone can gain access to the back door, and the security guards can't see what's happening in real time. So what can we do about this? Again, ignore the YouTube demonetization symbol. I did the best I could with the footage. But in the immediate sense, we can apply action rules when a camera goes down. And this can do some clever things. Firstly, it could trigger an alarm automatically, as you would expect. It could also lock the door so that no one is now able to use that exit because you can't see it. And you could also, and this is where it gets really clever, change the camera settings and routines. And what that means is if you have two cameras that are within a range of each other, especially if they have tilt and zoom functionality, you could actually set a rule so that when one camera goes down, the closest camera to it will tilt so that you can now see that area. So you would have been able to catch the person who did that before they left the area. The next thing that they did, now that they've disabled access, disabled the camera outside the building, they were able to sneak up onto the roof and under this camera, and they were able to actually disable the power. And yeah, if you disable the power and your system is reliant on that power for its MVRs, you're going to lose every single camera in the building as soon as someone's pulled a plug. Okay, bit of a hyperbolic scenario here. So let's take it back to your office for a moment. This is Lisa. Lisa is our cleaning lady. She's absolutely excellent at her job, but unfortunately, she can't actually reach the corner of the room to hoover under Matt's desk. So she's unfortunately going to unplug your critical server infrastructure to plug in the hoover. This thing happens, by the way. I've worked in technical support, and cleaners switching off critical infrastructure is nowhere near as rare as it should be. But this kind of thing happens. And that can, on a traditional MVR, you only have one connection. There you go. You've got nothing, no power. What can we do to mitigate this? Now, unlike traditional MVRs, our devices all have redundant. Well, sorry, a large number of our devices have redundant power options. So that means, if a cable is cut, whether it's by someone in a high pressure heist, or just as simple as the cleaning staff manages to kill the power in some way, you have immediate power from another source. That's 0 seconds of downtime. And you can also use this in combination with UPS devices. UPS, if you're not familiar, is basically a battery which will kick in if mains power goes down and give you time to do something with the system. If you have a smart UPS, you can even do something clever with it. So in this example, here we have the NAS that is connected to the mains power with a UPS battery. For whatever reason, the power is cut. If you have a smart UPS, you could get it to take an action, such as engage a process which will start a generator, and there you go. You now have a backup set of power ready to go at a moment's notice. Next thing you can do, what happens if your network goes down? So, okay, again, hyperbolic situation, but network jammers like this do exist, and it can be difficult to protect your network from sort of cyber threats. But if it's a dedicated team, that's another great way of very, very quickly taking down all of the cameras in your business. Or again, cleaning staff could disconnect a router, or another occasional headache in the industry is sometimes, depending on the size of your business, and where you're situated, your provider might not be able to provide you 100% uptime on that service. So what can we do? Again, it's worth noticing that most of our devices have multiple network points, something that isn't standard on most MVRs. So as soon as that line is cut, absolutely no downtime at all. We can just fail over to another network. Incidentally, and we'll talk about this in more detail in a second, edge recording could kick in if your cameras support it. Our cameras support it. Just a little bonus feature here, those network lines, having multiple network points on it means as well, if you want to use different subnets for cameras to make it more difficult to take them all down in one go, or just for security purposes, you can use this as a way to connect to multiple different network environments and connect to cameras across multiple subnets. So the next stage, why not just disable or steal the MVR itself? So in this heist, they were able to, all right, pause. They weren't able to get any further than this. They were able to gain access to a security card and get straight into the security room. This is the kind of thing that a heist team will do in advance, is gain access keys, maybe get an inside guy to provide those level of details, maybe just steal it. But a little bonus feature here, as it was something that we were playing with recently at the security show, and shout out to anybody who came to see us there. It's actually fairly easy to integrate our facial recognition with our DVA systems, and to just detect whether someone is valid or not valid to go into an area. You could combine that with a door control system like we would expect a bank security room to have. And basically, even with the pass as a second layer of security, it wouldn't open the door unless the person was verified to be in that building. So just a little extra thing that we can add over traditional NVRs. In this instance, that wasn't in place, so they were able to get in and they were able to trash all of the drives. Now, what can we do now as all of the cameras in this scenario go offline and they're able to go in and do as they please in the vault? Well, in our scenario, with Synology cameras in place, you would have edge recording. What is edge recording? Essentially, you've got an SD card that goes into the individual cameras. And if for any reason, if power, network, damage, anything takes the device that is connecting to offline, your footage will be recorded onto the camera itself, and it will be retained there until the connection to the host device is resumed. But when it is resumed, it will then copy that footage back in place to the recording folder. So when you're looking through on the back end, you want to recover the footage from the event. If it was a malicious attack that took the system offline, it will be exactly where you'd expect to find it. If you've got things like motion alerts, etc., you'll have that available to quickly find the footage that you're looking for. Then again, this is offered by some third-party cameras, but it is something that is fantastic and effortless to set up on our Synology cameras. Both of these have got SD slots, and just out of the box, the only thing you have to do is put that SD card in, and it'll be enabled by default for you. So, as we say, in this particular instance, they got away with it. But what can we learn from this one, and what makes us the ideal solution? The first thing that they tried to do was to physically damage the camera. And again, with action rules, you can simply have one camera set to do a patrol path, etc. If the camera next to it goes down, fairly easy to set open, so you can just fail over to another camera. If the power is cut, unlike most NVRs, we will have a redundant power, so you can put a UPS on each of those for double the battery time before anything fails over. If you have a higher end UPS, that device can then go on and kick into a generator. If you're on sort of a high security site, that'd be a recommendation that I'd make, as you have backup power. If one of the storage disks fails, so if, for example, your RAID array fails, you can have a hot spare that is set to rebuild the array, and will take sort of half an hour and remove that weakness, and that footage will still be available while it's rebuilding. If the entire device is disabled, why not just fail over to another NVR? Now, I didn't cover it in this one because I covered CMS to absolute death. I see there was a raised hand there. Is that a question? Because I will take a question, and we are coming up to the Q&A pretty soon. But yeah, keep them coming. I haven't mentioned CMS very much in this one, but it wouldn't be a Les webinar if I didn't get to talk about CMS. So yes, you can simply have a backup device ready on-site, off-site, wherever you want, really, just in the CMS pool. And if your main device goes down for any of the reasons that we discussed, it can fail over. I did that in my last webinar, and it took between 30 seconds and a minute to have all of the cameras routed to a different NAS. If your disks are stolen, you can also save your footage. We have a free app called Archive Vault, which allows you to archive footage from one NAS to another NAS. So you can use that to get that 3-2-1 backup in place. And we also have C2 surveillance, which can go as little as £10 per camera per year. I'll talk a little bit more about that, actually. £10 per camera per year. It gives you 720p footage, and it also gives you 7 days of retention for that footage, which might sound a bit little, but when it comes down to it, that's something you put in a strategic location. You put that in the area where someone is going to go in and do some damage. So like in a camera that's covering the NVR. 7 days is like absolutely ample time. You're only going to be using this storage as your backup, your redundancy, if the primary storage is removed. So you should get a notification you should know within minutes that that system's been compromised, which gives you plenty of time to arrange to download the data that you need. And again, I wouldn't apply it to all cameras at 720p, but the one that you've put in a strategic location on the other side of a doorway, for example, should, even at 720p, get a pretty good read on somebody's face. So that should be sufficient for evidence scenario. So if you just want that little bit of extra peace of mind, I do recommend just having, maybe 2 or 3 cameras, maybe even just the one with the live cloud backup, because it's a huge amount of redundancy for very little money. But yeah, that really, if we just circle around to the principles, that covers over your hardware level redundancies. So we have, hot spares for automatic RAID rebuild. We have redundancies on power and on networking that typical MVRs will not have. We have full MVR failover. So with that CMS cluster, if one of your devices goes down, you can have a backup device waiting in the wings. Aside from the cost of the kit, there's no additional cost for having that failover cluster there. Also, if you use Synology for things that aren't surveillance, maybe you've got it running as a file server, you might find that the frames are a little bit choppy on the live feed. But you can often just use that as a worst case scenario, throw that in there as the failover device, and that will be adequate to capture footage while something is going on or while your MVR is being repaired. So again, it's something that's free of charge. If you have multiple devices, make use of it. And finally, for off-site storage, we have both that C2 surveillance. We can offer 4K backup for as long as you want it, really, but the pricing does scale at the lower end. 720p, 7 days being ample to pull it down if you need it as that offsite backup resource. £10 per year is absolutely nothing to have that one crucial entranceway covered, no matter what happens. On top of that, we've got all kinds of things. We talked about failovers. You can have multiple failovers. With CC surveillance, you're writing to the cloud at the same time as you're writing to the NAS. So literally, like not even a second between it. If the NAS goes down, you're missing nothing. We have high availability devices. So those are where you have 2 devices in a cluster where they essentially function as one device on the operating system level. So like even beyond the surveillance package, the entire NAS, 2 physical NAS doing one job. So that's completely seamless if one goes down. That's another thing you can do. You can have link aggregation in place and multiple network layers, backup networks. So if one goes down, you're still able to route it through the others. Hot spares will rebuild your RAID array while the system remains up. That's nice and easy. And of course, we offer fully redundant systems where not just the power, not just the network, but the entire board on the unit is redundant. So any hardware failures, 0 uptime, it just fails over. Very simple stuff. So I appreciate this one was on the shorter side and it was a little bit silly. So I'd like to firstly thank everybody for indulging me in my madness. But that's all for this week, folks.